All right, IronPigs fans, welcome back to another episode of Welcome to the Pig Leagues. And today we are joined with the host of the High Hopes podcast and producer for WIP, a man who loves minor league baseball more than maybe anybody I know, Jack Fritz. Jack, how are you?
Pat, good to be here. And I miss talking myself into all of these guys. You know, for as much as I love watching the Phillies and like watching the Phillies is my favorite thing in the world, being able to talk myself into the next Phillies great is equally as fun. So for as much as I'm missing Major League Baseball, I'm missing minor league baseball just as much.
Well, you guys had a huge road trip planned at one point too, right? I know you've been out to Reading, but you guys were going to do a whole sweep through the minor league system.
Yeah, we were planning on doing like a road to the big leagues thing, where we can go meet some High Hopes listeners in Reading. I don't think we were going to make it all the way up to Williamsport, but the crosscutters are my favorite. So if I could have made it up to the Williamsport to see the first round pick from this year's draft, I would have done it everything in my power to be there. But yeah, we were planning on going up to Reading, making our way to Lehigh Valley, and then eventually a High Hopes night at Citizens Bank Park. So probably won't happen this year, but hopefully next year we can kind of get that going again and meet High Hopes listeners all over the minor league circuit.
You seem to have taught yourself into Bryson Stock way before the Phillies even made the pick. Where do you find these guys? I mean, I love college baseball, but I talk to some people, and I mentioned college athletes to them, and they have absolutely no idea. Where do you find these guys before the draft process even starts?
I go into Google, type in MLB mock draft, and I obviously search it out to where I get the newest stuff. And I remember when I first started doing it last year, it was maybe January, and Stott was kind of in the 20s. And, before the season had started, Stott was in the 20 to 25 range, and I saw the swing, and I was like, man, that's a pretty sweet swing. Looks smooth. And I saw he played for USA, and I just like the idea of guys that playing at the highest level translating to the big leagues. So just kind of watched him, and his season went on. He added more pop. I think his junior year, he only hit like 4 home runs. And then his sophomore year, he only hit 4 home runs. Junior year, I'm pretty sure last year he jumped it up to 10. So, just kind of tracked his whole season. And I remember seeing mock drafts before the draft that had him like number 4. Like, I remember he was getting top 5 buzz, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I kind of checked him off. And then I remember a couple days before the draft really was getting there, and the week before, you get feelers out there, and it seemed like everything was returning that the Phillies might have a chance to get this guy. So it was just a perfect storm, and all these guys started going ahead of him, and he started slipping a little bit. I don't totally know why he started slipping, but I remember I was just ecstatic when Stott was available at 14 last year. So it's just being on the guys early and going from there.
The Phillies have gone college bat the last 3 years in the first round. Do you prefer college first round versus high school first round, whether that's an arm or a bat?
I like they're just an easier bet. It's so hard to project what a high school guy is going to look like. I actually am worried that they've gotten a little bit too far away from going high school. It feels like they might have gotten a little scared away. Like, you look at a guy like Logan Simmons. I mean, he was a 5th-round pick. They paid a ton of money to, and they got him right out of high school. I mean, Jamari Baylor was a guy I loved in last year's draft. They got him in the 3rd round. So they are doing some of that. But I do think that there is top-level prep talent that they've been a little bit shy of, especially in this year's draft. Like, there's a guy from Central Bucks East, Nick Bitsko, who I just think looks like just a horse. When you're talking about like what a future ace looks like, I think it's this kid. He's 6'4", like 215 already 97 off the bump in high school. Like, what is that? Like, how does everyone start throwing 97 these days? Meanwhile, me and you are like 84 and loving life. And it's like, man, I throw hard. And then now you got like Nick Bitsko, and it's 97. So there's some really interesting prep arms in this draft. And there's some really interesting bats. Ed Howard's a guy that I think is going to be a face of a franchise one day. He was on that Chicago team in 2014, was in the Little League World Series. He was a shortstop on that team, so one of the legendary Little League teams the last couple of years. So I get the college route, and the Phillies have kind of been in this mindset of, let's draft a guy and let's get him on a fast track and help our major league team as quickly as possible. And while that makes sense for where the Phillies were, they're trying to have the fastest rebuild in baseball history. Sometimes you have to hit on the prep route, and even though it takes a little bit longer for those guys to develop, it helps prolong the window, being able to hit on the high school guys. So I hope they kind of reverse it a little bit this year. It would be a nice year to do it. There's 3 great prep arms and a couple interesting high school bats. But honestly, like at 15, there's already so much talent that I don't think they can go wrong at 15.
It's funny you mentioned like the high school kids throwing 97. I used to joke with people all the time in college. Here I am at 6'5", 250 plus pounds, and I can barely throw the ball 75 miles an hour. I can throw a submarine just to get strikeouts. Meanwhile, my roommate in college was about 5'10" and 180 pounds soaking wet, and he was sitting 91. It just doesn't really make sense at all. And clearly it was just unfair for you and I, whose college careers probably could have blossomed a lot better if we threw the ball, even remotely close to 85 miles an hour.
Right. Well, that's just, that's what makes baseball so great. It's like anyone, anytime can kind of it's just freak stuff. I mean, Pedro was 5'10", like 160, and it was just disgusting all over the place. So, that's what makes the game great. And you have Lance Lynn, who I'm built like Lance Lynn, and he's sitting 95. It's just that's what makes the game the game.
And there's people like Jamie Moyer who like us, couldn't really break glass for so long in their career, but were able to locate and able to throw strikes and able just to miss barrels. It's really the only sport where that's physically possible, where guys can be so drastically different and have such drastically different careers, but still be able to succeed. Is there anybody in the Phillies system right now in terms of older guys that have kind of taken longer to develop that you've had your eye on?
I think Moniak's still been underrated. I know he's not super old, but he's been in the system for a long time. And I think he really took some interesting strides the last couple of years. I think Jason Ochart coming in really helped him a lot. And I think if you took out his really, really slow start last year in Reading, he had good overall numbers. And Moniak, everywhere he's gone, he's been the youngest player in the league, or one of the youngest players in the league. I think last year he only faced 3 or 4 pitchers that were younger than him. So he's always facing older competition. He was the former number 1 overall pick in the draft. And I just think that he's just been written off too early by a lot of people. Royce Lewis things drive me crazy because they put up same numbers last year pretty much. Right. And Royce Lewis is viewed as this unbelievable prospect. I think Royce Lewis is a fine prospect, but I just think that too many people have just completely written off Moniak, and I think there's a useful player in there. I don't know what's going to be, number 1 overall. It's so much different in baseball. Baseball, getting a major leaguer in the first round is a win, pretty much. And I think Moniak's a major leaguer, and I think he was doing some really interesting stuff in spring training. I was down there days before it all shut down, and Moniak smoked the ball in the last day there. He finally looked comfortable in major league camp. So I'm really bummed that we weren't going to be able to see him. Just in seeing the videos from over the winter, I thought he looked like he was really starting to fill out and get stronger. I think I saw something, he added 20 pounds of muscle. So just getting him stronger. I really was excited to see him kind of keep continuing to develop and taking steps forward. And I really like what I saw down in spring training. And I think there's a useful player in there, and it might take a couple of years, but I'm still a Mickey Moniak believer.
I was going to ask you about spring training because those of us that listen to the High Hopes podcast know that Seltzer rips you all the time for the fact that you had never gone down to spring training. And of course, anybody can find the High Hopes podcast on anywhere you find your local podcast, on the iTunes App Store or Androids. But what was that that first time you finally got to spring training like? I know it's been on your bucket list for quite some time.
Oh, it was beautiful. I felt like a kid in a candy store. I was I was ready to go to the ballpark at 7 a.m. and John, they like baseball. Obviously, they're baseball fans, but I live and breathe baseball. Like it's all I think about all the time. Unfortunately, I've had to think a lot about the Eagles recently, because the draft and stuff. But we're trying to get back on track with the Phillies. But spring training, spring training was just incredible. I asked the John Brazier, who's director of fun and games.
Director of Fun and Games,
like,
best title in all of in anything.
I'm so jealous. Like, could I have that job? I asked him, like, can I go check out the minor league facility? And he's like, people don't ask that, but sure, let's go. Let's go check out the minor league facilities. So, like, I'm geeking out, walking back there, and there's like 4 fields. They're all playing at the same time. I'm watching Bohm take batting practice, and Alec Bohm was hitting absolute tanks. I'm pretty sure he hit 8 home runs in BP, and I was like, oh wow, like I can't wait to see this guy play. So I was walking back there, saw their whole indoor facility, which was like everything. It was just souped up what I grew up with, and it was like, wow. Honestly, my main takeaway from spring training was this is what real baseball looks like versus what I have been doing my whole life. Like, these guys are just on another level.
Oh, yeah.
But honestly, like, we get to the stadium super early because we had to record our interviews before they had to start their practice and lifting and all of that. So we were there at like 7:30 in the morning, and you just saw the players drive by in their Maseratis and Jaguars, and Gene Segura's getting dropped off in a Cadillac. And it's like, oh, hey, Gene, how's it going? Bryce drives by. And it was just, we were so close to the guys, and they were just walking by, and it was crazy. And then Clearwater, didn't realize how fun Clearwater was.
Yeah.
Like, we went out one night, and Aaron Boone was out, and he goes, is that the Great Ike Reese? Because Aaron's a big Eagles fan, and Ike's like, Aaron Boone, but Aaron Boone knew who he was, and it was Aaron Boone's birthday, so they got a picture together, and Lazinski was with them, and just like, we went out one night, and Mickey Morandini's there with all the 93 Phils guys, and it's like, what is this? This is like nothing I'd ever thought I could experience in my life. So spring training was just unbelievable. It's unfortunate it got shut down, but just an amazing time.
I tell people all the time, in terms of access to players, it is without a doubt the best time to be there, is because you can just go out in the backfields and easily get access to any minor leaguer that's out there. And then same thing, is you get there early enough. I mean, I'm sure you guys got there at 7:30, and there were tons of people already out there looking for autographs. I know when we would get to the complex for a 1 o'clock game around like 8 o'clock, I mean, there was at least 30 or 40 people already there looking for autographs. And at that point, a lot of the guys have already come in.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as crazy, but there was definitely people out there ready to go and trying to get some autographs. But no, it was just I already can't wait. Hopefully they'll let me go again next year, because I just need to be there every year at this point.
Well, you got a chance to meet Nick Pivetta. What was it like? Was it everything that you could have dreamed of? Did you guys talk about breakout Pivetta?
No. We did. We did, not me and him. So in the interview, they're talking to Pivetta. Well, all right, let's start at the beginning. He comes out, walks out of the locker room, and I'm standing there, and one of the John Reich was like, yeah, Nick, this is your biggest fan. And he kind of just gave this like, oh, okay. And then shook my hand, which is funny, but he kind of got the bit from Jump Street, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started interviewing him, and towards the end, Ike was like, yeah, and Jack was the guy over there that really was the main one that was predicting your breakout last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of gives me this look of like, oh, thanks, man. And it was like, oh, but I thought it was funny, and he thought it was funny. And then at the end of the interview, John said to Pivetta, Jack was a college pitcher, and he says all the time that like he was good or whatnot. Could you just break down his mechanics? So they make me do a dry run of my mechanics, and Pivetta's like, he's got an explosive front side. Like it seemed pretty good to me, and that was enough for me to almost faint. And then Pavetta on the way out. Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask for a picture because I didn't want to be like a fanboy or
Right.
whatever. And then Ike goes, "Man, you gotta get a picture." And I was like, "All right, I would love to get a picture." And Nick goes, "Do you want to get a picture?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And then we got the picture, and it was awesome. So yeah, meeting Pavetta was great. He had fun with it. That's all we were trying to do, was have some fun with Breakout Pavetta. So yeah, I hopefully we can meet again. But for the first meeting, I would say the first meeting went well.
Did you grow up listening to WIP? I mean, has this been just an absolute dream job for you, getting a chance to work at that radio station?
Yeah, dude, all the time. I got into it pretty late. Like I didn't even really know there was like sports talk radio until high school. Like I just didn't, because my parents aren't the biggest sports fans, you know. So like they would kind of say, "Ah, it's like kind of cute. You like sports, whatever." But but this isn't going to turn into like a career or anything. So I didn't really know about it until like high school. And then one time I remember I was driving home from somewhere with my mom when I was like, 14, and she put on 610 something. And I was like, wait. They talk about the sports on here like all the time? Like this is their job to talk about sports? Like that's ridiculous. Like why can't I do that? So maybe it was early. 14's a little old. I would say I was 10 or 11 when she put on 610. And I was like, I didn't know this is possible.
Yeah.
So I just remember listening then listened all throughout end of high school into college. And I went to college as a finance major.
Mhm.
And my first year, I realized I was horrible at math. So that was one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my life. I think I had like a 2.3 GPA trying to do baseball and finance, which was just a bad idea.
Mhm.
So after my freshman year, I was like, what do I really want to do? And I was like, well, I could be a history teacher, or I could do what I actually want to do, which
Mhm.
is just give sports opinions all the time. So really sunk in at that point, really dug in, and yeah, dude, like being able to work with Howard Eskin, who's a legend, is crazy. Happy birthday, Howard. And being able to work with Angelo was nuts. Like the first thing I did was working on the Angelo show. And it's like, well, this is a crazy turn of events. If you told me 2 years ago that I'd be an involved member of Angelo's show, like I would have told you were crazy. And then just working way up from there. I mean, meeting Ike was a dream. It's crazy. It's crazy. I try not to take for granted being able to eventually work with Fransky in LA was another like pinch yourself moment. I mean, just the greatest. And Franzen obviously joins in that as well. Can't leave out Kevin. He gets
And
fair.
he'll call you out on it if you do. He will get very mad at both of us.
It's like, come on, Kev. Like, just relax. Just relax. So yeah, Kevin Franson is part of the booth as well. It's actually funny. Like, I remember, I think I told him this, but whatever. Like when he was on the Phillies, I remember I loved Kevin Franson.
Mm-hmm.
Like Franson was that role player that was like that was. I always thought he was clutch. Like I always felt like Kevin Franson was going to get a big hit when I needed a big hit for the Phils. So I don't know. Like being able to work with him, I was like, man, I used to love this guy.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting to work with him and eventually turn into friends. And yeah, all of it's just a total dream. And I couldn't be happier.
Well, Jack, I really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. Like we said, please subscribe and listen to the High Hopes podcast. Jack and James do an absolutely phenomenal job. I do have one more question for you about the High Hopes pod before I let you go. Jackie Unwritten Rules, as Seltzer calls it. I am a huge fan of the unwritten rules of baseball. I live by them. I think it's wrong if you don't. Why does James give you such a hard time about the unwritten rules of baseball?
Because James is thirsty, and James just has to have the typical down the middle opinion. And he just doesn't respect the game. Sometimes you got to respect the game. The unwritten rules are not in place to get anyone injured. No one wants to get injured. They're there to send a message, and it's part of what makes baseball the best. Like, I think people always ask me, the unwritten rules, like explain them, or how do you know what's an unwritten rule and what's not an unwritten rule?
You just know.
You just know. It's the easiest way to explain it in the entire world. is that you just know when you steal up 8 runs, that's an unwritten rule. You don't do that. When you're relaying signs from second base to home that are like the pitcher picks up on and they're that obvious, unwritten rule. When you're at the plate and you're looking back to see where the catcher's setting up, unwritten rule. That like it. I'm not like there's a difference between like throwing at someone's head or whatever, and just I could never hit anyone. Like I've tried to hit people before, and I would always just throw it like behind them. It would never work out that way. But the unwritten rules, they're important, and it's how the game has been played forever. And I just don't like that people continue to not appreciate what they are. I mean, the game's been around for 140 years. It's always policed itself. Like, it always takes care of itself. That's what makes baseball baseball. And I just think it's gotten too far away from, like, I don't know. It's part of the game. It's not meant to get anyone hurt. It's just baseball is a game of respect, and sometimes it's disrespectful the way some people are playing.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that I think some people go overboard on the bat flip stuff. Like the bat flip stuff is
it's all fun.
Like that stuff that if you don't want to bat flip, then get them out. Like that's as simple as it gets. But some of the things like stealing up 8 runs, that can't happen. Mm-hmm. That can't happen. So listen, I will continue to believe in the unwritten rules. I will stick up for the unwritten rules. I will always stick up for the unwritten rules because I think they're fun, and I think they're part of what makes baseball baseball. And I don't like seeing the game change. I know that sounds like the most pure baseball guy thing ever. I hate the DH. I love the unwritten rules, but that's just how I view the game of baseball. So I don't know. What can you do?
Well, Jack, thanks so much. I really appreciate taking the time and joining us.
Oh, of course, Pat. Thank you so much for having me.
He's Jack Fritz. I'm Pat McCarthy. Thanks so much for watching today's episode of Welcome to the Pig Leagues. We'll talk to you next time.